Welcome on this session, Talks with Leaders, from the Talks with Leaders series. Today we have with us Ms. Katarzyna Stachurska from TISE, which is the social and economic investment company from Poland with 30 years of experience on the Polish market. And today we would like to explore the experience of TISE and find out what are the most relevant lessons learned, but also talk a little bit broadly on the sector of social economy in Poland and learn from this experience. So welcome again. And maybe I will, as we have 20 minutes and there's a huge topic to be covered, I will start with a very general question. If you could describe the social economy market in Poland and how it has changed in this last 30 years, what's the landscape, what we are talking about?
Thank you. I would say that the Polish social economy sector has more than 30 years of history behind. This tradition is very strong, very important for the Polish economy and the Polish history as such. Cooperatives were very, very present in the Polish landscape for over 100 years. This being said, during the communist times, this concept of cooperatives was abused, and now its associations are not necessarily positive for everybody. So this heritage of the past is somehow tricky. Nevertheless, these traditions are strong, and we try to refer to these traditions because they are really worthy to remember and to use this experience. The size of the sector is difficult, of course, to assess because the definition is not clear. But I would rely on the reports published by Association Klon Jawor that we use regularly because they are repeated year after year and show the progress, the development, the trend on the market. So according to them, we have about 70,000 of active associations and foundations in Poland, so NGO sector. These organizations are numerous but quite weak, quite vulnerable, with 25 members on average, with only 26,000 zloty, so really 5,000 euro of annual revenue, which is not a lot. Only 6% of these organizations have more than 1 million zloty, so 200 to 210,000 euro of revenues yearly. But still, the sector is growing, which is a positive trend. Still growing, still developing. The Polish NGO are active mainly in sport, culture, education. Of course, beside NGO, we have also cooperatives that I have mentioned already, social cooperatives today. We have also non-profit limited liabilities companies and other organizations who meet this criteria of social economy entity. So the sector is big and quite diversified, I would say. The sector is still growing, but I would say the sector is less and less optimistic about their future and further growth. From my perspective, as a financial company, what is a little bit worrying is that the social economy entities report that they rely more and more on public funding, on public sources of financing. The part of revenues coming from economic activities is decreasing, which is not a good news, a good prognostic for the future. Whereas the organizations rely more and more on public funding, they are complaining on bureaucracy, growing bureaucracy. And this trend should be somehow reversed, in my opinion, if the sector is supposed to grow further. The majority of our organizations, social economy actors, social economy entities, they do not have fixed assets. They do not have financial stability. They live from project to project, from grant to grant. They are not able to present any medium, long-term financial projections. To make from the entities of this sector more interesting target for financing for private sponsors, the sector should mature. Of course, the sector is growing, is maturing, but the hopes that it would come quickly are not necessarily or only partially true. Very few organizations are big enough to enjoy stable teams, stable activity, and stable sources of financing. It's my preoccupation. I'm looking at the sector from this perspective. So it is something which is important for us. But I would say the sector is still growing, still maturing. So it is absolutely the positive aspect. TISE is present in this sector from the very, very beginning. We are active in Poland for over 30 years now. And from the very beginning, as the financial provider, so the provider of financing through loans, through also direct investments, now it's mainly loans. We are operating the first social venture capital fund dedicated to social economy entities in Poland. It is done. This fund is run in cooperation with the Ministry of Regional Development. But the majority of our activity is loans. These loans, 80% of funds come from public institutions. So the Polish State Bank for Development, BGK, distributing many European funds, but also European Investment Fund directly, and other public institutions, Ministry of Regional Development, who is our important partner also. 20% of our portfolio, more or less, comes from our own funds. Our sole shareholder is the French cooperative bank, Crédit Coopératif, and we are also providing our own funds to the sector. Just a couple of figures, not to bother you too much with that. We have disbursed from 1914 over 45 million euro in loans, in 630 loans, more or less. The average amount of such loan seems quite significant because it's almost 80,000 euro, but it is decreasing recently. And our current exposure for the sector, for the social economy sector in Poland, is about 15 million euro currently. Our beneficiaries, as it was said, associations, foundations, social cooperatives, non-profit limited liabilities companies, but also religious legal persons. They are also among our borrowers. And sectors that we finance: education, sport, social services, restaurants, catering. Social services is the sector developing, I would say, in the most dynamic way, which is very good news. But I think education is the sector the most presented among our.
This means private schools, nurseries,
nurseries, private schools with public status. So these schools are run by associations. They are not private in terms that parents are paying a lot, but parents are contributing a little bit. there is an association or a foundation running this school, nurseries, but also other forms of education. A lot of sport clubs, a lot of additional education, a lot of daily care for children with problems, and so on and so on. So many forms of education.
This is interesting. I think I had this conversation with other financial intermediaries in Austria, in Sweden, and they are pointing out that there is the sectors where the state is somehow withdrawing. There is much more activity of the social society, of the civil society. So it seems it's a similar trend here.
Yeah. Our government is also abandoning a little bit education, and there is more and more demand coming from parents to assist this education process and provide services.
I wanted to ask you here, because you're working with Polish Development Bank and the ministry using the EU funds. So my question would be, what are the best lessons, and what could work better when it comes to making use of this, utilizing these funds?
First of all, I would say, and I would really repeat it and focus on it. We must admit that both BGK and the Ministry of Regional Development, distributing European funds, are really involved, really engaged, and we appreciate a lot their involvement in the sector. We really recognize this involvement. And when we complain about the bureaucracy and so on, it's always with this first remark. We recognize the involvement and the efforts made. This being said, this public policy is based on very strict criteria, on very strict process. Programs are based on very small loans now. As I said, our average amount of loan is decreasing because programs now are proposing to the social economic sector loans at 12,000 euro even. So it's really, in our opinion, too small loans. Any entity must meet very formal and very strict criteria to be eligible for any funds. And then the process itself is extremely strict with products, with conditions, with collaterals that we are forced to ask for, collection of these collaterals if our entity has problems with repayment, and very, very limited, or to say even clearly, no flexibility on the side of the ministry or BGK. It is what is missing, certain flexibility in approach to our beneficiaries. This is something absolutely to be improved.
And this is just interrupt. This is interesting because I was talking yesterday with Martina Grigorova. She is the CEO of Microfinance Credit MFI in Bulgaria, and they cooperate with Fund of Funds, and they don't need to require any collateral when distributing the loans. And she says it's really a game changer.
Absolutely, it is a game changer because these small loans we can give without collateral, or with personal guarantees of members of associations, which is also something a little bit for me difficult to accept. But if we go beyond 25,000 euro, BGK is requiring we have material collaterals in place. We ask for mortgages. And so on, which is a barrier for many organizations because, as I said, they have no fixed assets or limited fixed assets or fixed assets belonging to private members. They have low equity, and as the result, they have low credit worthiness, which makes the sector still, despite efforts made for years, this sector is not attractive for banks. It is something that is discussed with BGK on regular basis. BGK is made really repeated efforts to implement instruments for banks to encourage them to finance to bigger extent the social economy sector, but it's not working. And in my opinion, it's not working because the organizations are too small, too weak, without assets, without equity, with or low equity, and that's why their credit worthiness is limited. Another issue is private sponsors. They are coming. Poland is progressing and developing on in this field because the economy is growing. So these private sponsors appear more and more, but we should not be too optimistic and too impatient. It's coming slowly, and private sector would not be able to support the social economy sector as it is the case in the United States, France, Germany, or other countries with bigger potential, simply richer and with bigger traditions in this field. So that's why our social economy entities must rely on public funding, and that's why this public funding, these European funds, are so important, and the policy how to distribute them is so important for the sector, because private sponsors are still of less importance, and they cannot replace the public sources. This being said, I would say that the sector for me is divided in two. It is something that it's surprising and a little bit sad to see. Sometimes we can see that the social economy entities are somehow even forced by the circumstances to choose whether they cooperate with public institutions, rely on public funding, meet the criteria of social economy entity based on the Social Economy Act, or they prefer to work with private sector, private sponsors, and rely more on their economic activity instead of public funding. It's very difficult, and it should not be that way that social economy entities can see themselves forced to make such a choice. And for me, it is one of the most important barriers of further development of the sector in Poland. We must get private sponsors more involved, despite the involvement of public institutions that we appreciate. And one should not exclude other. We should find a way, find instruments to involve and to get private sponsors on board, which with these strict processes that the public institutions are applying now is really, really difficult. We can hear this will from decision makers. They are talking about the involvement of private sponsors, but the reality in terms of conditions, controls, criteria, eligibility, and so on and so on and so on, makes it hardly possible.
I can somehow I have an intuition that it may be this choice between either this or that funders may come from the fact that in both cases the due diligence process is complicated. You're going to the public or even the private philanthropists. It's some time and energy consuming for the social enterprise that it's just they don't have capacity to really do both. I've heard that a lot. So
these two processes should not be so different from each other. I mean, there's no reason for them to be so different and so time consuming. This is not something This is not something that we cannot change, that we cannot influence and have impact on.
Surely. And being conscious of time, I want to ask you the last question. There is this year there was the Social Economy Act adopted in Poland. It's a consequence of long discussions, or at least discussions. I'm not sure about this discussion, but definitely long process. And it is said that it's better when the country has a law for the social economy. And how it is in practice from your perspective? Does the law helps, or it actually makes things more difficult?
From my perspective, this act does not help a lot, in the sense that it creates this split, this private versus public difference, and to say that it is also partially the reason why the sector is so divided. So I'm not really enthusiastic about the idea as such, and even less enthusiastic about the way it is done, because we have big issues now on operational side because of this act. Regional social economy support centers are left without instructions, procedures, and money right now because of the change of this act. And if they are in such situations, our borrowers are complaining that they are not ready, they have no support, and we can feel it already in the demand for our loans. So the situation is quite complex, and there are advantages and disadvantages of such situations. For me, and my perspective is maybe a little bit controversial. Not everybody is sharing the same point of view in our sector. With such act, with such formal criteria, so strict, prohibiting social economy entities from distributing profits in any case, at any form, we simply discourage private sector to step in. And maybe just to conclude by a little bit different idea, but not so different, everything should be combined together. We are talking a lot about green, about digital, and so on and so on. Without private sector involved, we will not have green, we will not have digital, we will not have impact financing. And it would be a pity, and it is a little bit still the case, that we are talking about social, at least I'm talking about Polish experiences. We are talking about social, but thinking social, we are not thinking green, we are not thinking digital. I am talking to my client, asking him about green approach in their activities, and they are saying to me, but we are a social entity, social economy entity. We are not involved in green initiatives. Absolutely wrong way of thinking. We should combine these approaches together, get private sponsors on board, and then we will make a huge step forward. And I'm not sure that the Social Economy Act is really helpful in this field.
Thank you very much for this. This was very refreshing, and also thank you for sharing your honest opinion. And it's also important to point out that there are not only successes, but there are many challenges on the way, and that's true. That's life, and we are still in the process of improving.
We are still in the process, but we are growing. We are progressing, not as quickly as we would like to, but still.
That's the kind of the sector we've chosen, yeah.
Yeah.
A lot to be done. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Bye.